Welcome to this week's episode of Food Bites. Those two people that you saw at the beginning was Mike Carter and Luis from the Food Bank, and they've got some really exciting stuff going on. But I wanted to introduce you to Mike Carter. He's the CEO of the London and District Construction Association. Awesome partners of the Food Bank. You're a big part of Business Cares. I know you're out in the community doing a whole bunch of different things for the community, Mike. But you came up with, it's your 125th anniversary as an organization. And so you decided you wanted to do something special for the community. Can you just kind of take it from there? Say how you decided things?
Yeah, so in 2023, LDCA was 125 years old. And I guess about 7 years ago, we got involved with the London Food Bank through Business Cares Food Drive, a challenge from the London Home Builders Association. So shout out to them. Thanks for the challenge. Mm-hmm. And every year, we have increased our contributions via the Business Cares Food Drive, probably about 10% a year. So in 2022, we did, I think, $150,000 contribution. Last year was $220,000. But as we entered our 125th anniversary, we wanted to do something long-term, a sort of challenge to 150 years, 25 years from now. As we did something good for the community at 125, maybe you should do something good for the community at 150. Our involvement with the food bank, what we had seen is that at 10% food inflation every year, you're not really making any progress. You're just hoping not to fall further behind just on the amount of food, which then actually really doesn't help out much because there's continuous increasing demand for food. We decided that perhaps a better approach would be to move towards something that we would refer to as food security, which is to help the food bank gain a regular supply of fresh food that was as inflation-proof as we could possibly make it. And we started thinking about what we wanted to do. As part of our exploration, we came across, the farm in a box concept. It's really controlled environment agriculture, as would be properly known.
So those are food containers, correct?
Yeah, so there's options. There's many ways of how you could do controlled environment agriculture. There are very large operations that are out of warehouses. There are manufactured operations, but we settled on reusing sea cans, as it would be a far more cost-effective approach. Largely went that route so that if you can buy 5 sea cans at the price of 4 pre-manufactured, the food bank gets an incremental 20% increase more food than they would elsewise. And it was really that, and then we met with you folks, and it was like parallel universe minds coming together.
Yeah, it was.
You folks were thinking the same thing we were thinking, and onward we went.
And so the advantage of that too is that the food bank has really been trying to emphasize food security, because we believe that the food donation model for charities is kind of starting to get maxed out. It's very hard for people with high rents and high cost of groceries, high cost of living, very difficult for them. So the idea of growing our own was quite appealing. But if you took that same amount of money, let's say, that you put towards the farm in a box, these 5 containers you're talking about, and you put that, and you went out and bought that food with that money, it would be awesome. But then it would be done.
Then it'd be done.
That's right. What you're doing is, a number of crops happen each year in these different things, and so it allows food security to start getting a toehold in London and making a difference there. I wonder, I'm not sure Mike, but we've been trying to emphasize this so hard as a food bank now for a few years. But when the LDCA comes along and somebody, is kind of gung-ho as yourself, who sees that vision and goes for it, I'm not sure the community understands just what that means. It's, we often wait for governments to pass policies and do other things. But when a group like the LDCA comes along, and they decide they're going to do something like this, it puts immediate credibility to the project. Mm-hmm. Right? You folks know what you're doing. So these sea cans that you're building, for instance, the shell comes from elsewhere, but all the equipment and everything you're putting inside, you're designing yourself here, right? And you're working with Luis from the food bank in doing that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so very lucky. I mean, our members have built a lot of large grow operations for marijuana that goes on around here. We've built clean rooms at Western University. We've built operating rooms at London Health Sciences. So
It's important.
our members actually have the technical expertise to do this with their eyes closed. It's not a challenge from that standpoint, and it is all volunteer work. We've got manufacturers that have volunteered and given equipment. So it's a real community initiative is the way we're looking at it. And you'll get, I think the estimates are, and we've gone through some other processes to come up with it, is that there should be about 500,000 fresh servings of food coming out of one of these complexes on an annual basis, which is a reasonably good substantial amount of very fresh, very nutritious. You pick it in the morning, it's on a table. At supper time, you can't get any fresher and more nutritious than that. But it really is a community effort that I think will make quite an impact, a positive impact.
And you said a figure a couple of weeks ago. Is it one container is equivalent to, is it 1.5 acres of productive farmland?
No, my understanding is about 3. It's about 3, but it depends. It will really depend on the mix
crop,
of what kind of crop you're looking at. And we picked, obviously with you folks, very sort of intensively growable vegetables.
Yeah. So, Mike, the plan for you then is it, you're giving the first 2 to the food bank, which is great, but you're also then going out and trying to find other partners who will cooperate to get the other 3, which will then be the whole farm in a box idea. Yep. So that'll be 5 containers. So you're looking for other partners, which is awesome. But the first 2 you're working on now, I know you're working with Luis on the science of it and the productivity of it, but then you're hoping in the fall to be able to get those set up and ready to go. Do I have that right on the timeline?
Yeah, no, that's perfectly correct. Part of this, part of the approach that we've taken is the first thing we've done is we put a lab together, and it's largely, I mean, in physical terms, it'd be like pushing buttons, pulling levers, twisting dials, but it's all software driven. Yeah. But it's exactly the same concept. Is you actually have to understand the parameters on how you grow multiple types of crops in a controlled environment situation. And the intent of the lab is to allow Luis to experiment with different kinds of foods, but to do it in a safe environment where if you have a crop failure, it's a small amount of crop failure as opposed to by the time you get the full complex working, if you had a crop failure, it would be very, very significantly negative for food production for a period of time.
So I've been at the food bank 38 years, right? And this is one of the most exciting things that's ever happened to us as a food bank. And it's because somebody with your reach and scope, the LDCA, with your leadership, is able to take this on and actually do it. But the key to it is all of the other projects were all about getting food into the food bank and giving them out to people. We really depended on donations coming in and trying to make that happen. What you're doing is you're kind of building a farm in the community, an interior kind of farm. And the product from all of that will go to the food bank, to other agencies, but it just keeps growing and growing and growing of its own accord, right? Like it's not the kind of thing, if you match that to the amount of dollars for food and we had to keep collecting that every year, that would be a lot of money. But here we're growing and growing. That's one of the most exciting things that could happen to any food bank. So you did that. We really appreciate that.
Well, I think it is a fabulous sort of supplement to food coming in through donations.
Yeah. It is a supplement.
Once it's operational, it's a reliable source of food. We've structured the farming strategy for the complex. And one of the advantages that I think the food bank has working with somebody local like the Construction Association, we don't have any real preconceived notions.
Yeah.
So it's not as if one of the things that we've come up with is each C-can is divided into quadrants, which then means that there is a continuous source of fresh food coming out every week. It's not as if you have to wait 8 weeks, get a crop that is a full C-can. You get a quarter crop every 2 weeks, which then actually is food that can be easily absorbed into the community, however you folks decide
That's great.
decide to do it. So the way we've approached this with the food bank is each C-can can have, and we'll have to figure out exactly what the strategy for each can is, but each can will be set up to unique growing environments. So the first one that we're doing is, I refer to as Cabbage Town, which is all your leafy greens. So it's about 3 stacks high, away you go. The second one, we've sort of named Vineland, which is all of your tomatoes, your peas, your beans, and they grow on vines. So you'll end up with tomato plants that are 6 feet, 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
And it's a very sort of intensive vining of that. The third one is what we call superfoods, and it's all sprouts. And that is extremely intense compared to, so leafy greens, 3 levels, Vineland, 1 level, superfoods is probably 8 levels high. So we've been able to, because it's all local, develop strategies unique to each can, which then we'll provide the food bank with a good selection of fresh vegetables that they can provide.
So what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, we'll pivot a bit, and I'd like to show the folks the cooler that we have in the drive shack. So here we are. There's Mike Carter and there's Luis. So you guys have been working together now for the last few weeks developing this cooler that we had in the drive shed, but you turned it into a lab. Luis, how has that been for you working with Mike and the London District Construction Association? Good, or what do you think?
It's been good. It's a super nice opportunity, Glenn, to work with Mike. And I always have the idea to do something like this. But
why don't you show it to us here?
There you go.
You're right here in front of it. So this is it.
But the thing is, like, to retrofit it, here there is a lot of money and resources that thanks to Mike we got really to see how this works. So just the pumps, just the computers that run the pumps and the ventilation system inside. Those are resources that I didn't have to do to run it like this. So to have it like this automated is thank you to LDCA.
Yeah. So Mike, you guys are good at building stuff, but this is kind of a unique kind of science around the growing of food in containers. And you wanted to do this because you felt experimentation was necessary in doing some research before you started putting the whole farm in a box together. How has that experimentation been here? Did you learn a lot, or has it largely worked out as you thought?
No, you know what? So we started looking at doing a complex. It's an awful lot of intensive farming with minimal opportunity to mess up without having crop failure, which is something that we're desperately trying to avoid.
Yeah.
The only way that we could figure out how you could actually do it is to automate the process as much as we can, which is really back there is the tablet end of the software that we're using, which is a series of sensors and controllers that actually manage the entire environment 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And in thinking about how that would work, I think in discussion with Luis, we decided that let's put together a lab so that we actually can see how the software will automate the growing, and then Luis can actually focus in on areas that require his attention. The lab also provides Luis the opportunity to try new crops. If you want to try and grow something new, best to sort of put it into the lab, see how it fits within the environment of any C-can. You find out what will make it grow better, what will make it grow less. But that's really the reason for the lab, is it allows us to figure out how to grow stuff
Before it's built, before you build the farm.
before we actually go all in on any sort of much larger C-can.
Yeah.
And I think as if you look at what we have here, so on this side is the superfoods. So eventually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 layers tall. Very intense amount of food production. It will challenge the food bank because unlike the leafy greens, which are about an 8-week cycle, the superfoods are 10 to 14 days. So it means there is an intense amount of manual labor requiring to produce that. I mean, it's the best food ever. You can't sort of beat it for nutrition, but it's very intense. Far more than on the other side of the lab, we have 3 levels, which is more like our leafy greens. That's an 8-week cycle, so a little less intense requirement. And then at the very end, as a demonstration of Vineland, Luis is actually growing some vine crops.
Yes, the tomato going there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're getting, Luis is getting hands-on experience with not only the environment, because as we open up the door, you will be amazed at the amount of humidity that's in the room all the time, and the heat that has to be constant. But it allows experimentation on the key aspects of whatever farming strategy Luis decides to implement.
Luis, have you learned anything new from all of this, or is it largely stuff you figured you knew?
So I think there is something there, Glenn, about learning, because all of this is, the theory is not new, and the theory already learned, but to work it is different. To see how fast the hydroponic system can grow plants. Myself, I always do microgreens. Actually, that was the first thing that we do in the greenhouse when we started, because it was so easy. So I wasn't having any conflict with that, but to implement the system and to start learning about the pitfalls that you can do, like the using of fertilizer. These are chemistry in essence, and you have to rely on that, because you can mix stuff that shouldn't be mixed, and that's pretty much chemistry, and the system itself do dosing. So it self-regulate, but you have to make it in a way that is not going to conflict with anything, like put your bases in one part, the acids in other, the temperature itself, the temperature of the water, and we are just starting to take these cycles. Right now we can see the fluctuation in temperature, the fluctuation in humidity. I'm sorry, but we needed to make it stable. And that is just learning the program, learning a recipe to do this one. And the thing is, like as Mike says, we will have different environments for different plants, and different plants do have different needs. So we can finely tune that. And that finely tuning is the one that we're learning here.
That's great.
So we can have a difference between, instead of 1 pound of production, we can have 1.5 or even 2 pounds of production, tuning the fertility, tuning the lighting, and tuning the temperature of the room. And that's without changing any of the other parameters. So this is just by learning. And this is applying the learning that we're going to have here into the biggest one.
Yeah, that's going to be great. Well, why don't we, can we take a look inside and you show us what it's like? So it's very humid in here, right? So that's the way it usually is. But why don't you start by telling us what we're growing here?
So this is the area that we have the 3 levels. We can grow big leafy greens. We have the lettuces. We're growing some peppers in here. This is Swiss chard, more lettuces. Here we have a couple of strawberries. As you can see here, we have these trays. So in these trays, what happens really, the reservoir in the corner has the water with fertilizers. It's getting popped to the top. It feels like half of the reservoir, and then it starts trickle to the next one. And this one fills to the top, to half of the top, and then it starts trickling to the next one. The same thing happened in the last one, and then the water is recirculated.
Put all back through,
and the system starts over.
So Luis, just before you go on, then you're not really growing in soil per se, are you? It's really water. For the nutritious, more water.
The thing is, you need something for the plant, the root to grow into.
Some soil,
We can use this rock wool that you can see here or here. This is not soil. This is a rock that it was heated super hard, and you can make this really like medium here. So those are completely devoid of soil. Here we're growing with soil, but this soil is like just for holding the plant. There is no fertilizer in the soil,
Right.
so the fertilizer comes in the water,
I gotcha.
and that's the hydroponic system really.
That's great.
But right here, we're not using the soil as a source of nutrition. It's the
Yeah,
water.
it's the water. So Mike, what have we got on the other side here?
So on this side are the superfoods. This is the very intense. We're probably what, Luis, 50% of what the actual capacity could be,
Yes.
because it is very intensive once it gets going. We're experimenting with lighting. You will notice at the very far end we have fans set up, because one of the key areas of concern in a controlled environment is moisture actually
Yeah.
causing mold, which as soon as you get mold in a plant, you basically have to kill everything that's in the secant, wipe it all down
Redo
with
it,
Chavex
yeah,
and
yeah.
start all over again. And you try to avoid that. To go back to the leafy greens, one of the basic things that we had to decide, you can actually go with different grow systems, right? There is a pure hydroponic system, but it's very complex because you can't actually let the roots stay in water 24 hours a day.
They do have to. Yeah.
So you end up with a very sort of complex aeration water system. Our choice was to go grow medium with feeding as per what is required. And part of the experiment that we can do here is plants at certain stages of their life require more or less water, more or less light,
Yeah.
more or less of other things, and that's one of the advantages that we have here is we can experiment. Now, one of the experiments we're running is some of the lights are what you would just call full spectrum. So I think are those ones up
What's
top.
up?
And so that's a full spectrum, and then over on this side we've actually got some tunable lights, which you can change the red and the blue
Oh, yeah.
light depending upon the stage that the plant is growing at.
So Luis in the greenhouse uses lights to trick the plants so that they grow more. Is that basically what you're doing here too?
So this one is not
Not
what
the
we do
same.
in the greenhouse. In the
Okay.
greenhouse, we use a lamp that just trick the plants to believe that it's still summer, they're still having more light at 8 p.m., so
Yeah.
we can still be productive. So that is a low intensity lamp. This is a high intensity lamp. With this lamp, we can grow plants to the end
Yeah.
without any sunlight.
Gotcha.
I wouldn't grow with that lamp in here because it's not strong enough,
Yeah.
and that's what we see here.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, no, and it's, as Luis would tell you, because it's all programmable, we can actually do sunrise, sunset automatically, so it's not
Amazing.
hard light on, hard light off. It
Yeah.
actually is a very natural, I do believe the software allows for clouding effects so that it's not sort of the same intensity all the time. You can actually cloud the lights so there's less intensity, more
Yeah.
intensity.
And those are technologies that are just coming about like 5 years. Before 5 years ago, we didn't know all of these things that we're learning right now.
Yeah.
And this is also thank you to the cannabis industry. Like a lot of research come from them.
Yeah.
Now we are applying the same that they learn into growing food.
Right. So how long is this? Is it 15, 20 feet? How long? Do we
So
know?
This lab is, I believe, about 20 feet, so it's
Yes.
about half the size of what an actual
Container
full
will be.
full container is.
And width is,
Exactly, pretty much the same.
so that's 8 feet, 10 feet? What is
Yeah,
that?
It's about 8.5 feet
Yeah.
on the inside. We're about 9.5, 10 feet on to the roof.
Yeah.
But one of the things I'll show you here, if you don't mind, this is so the software is run off of sensors, and one of them
Yes, yeah.
is this one here is what, water?
That one, yeah. Tell me if that rock wall there is wet, so it's watering.
Yeah.
Also tells me the temperature of that block, and it also tells me the concentration of nutrient in the water of that block.
Yeah.
And I can read that in the computer in the front that you saw. I can read that in my phone at home, and I can read that right here in the screens.
Yeah.
So all of the sensors here have the screens, so you can work inside, you can read the information outside, and you can read the information remotely.
Yeah.
And we will have, I do believe, 16 of these sensors in each?
6, yeah.
16 in each C-can to actually, so we'll have on top, and then we'll have one in the middle, one on the bottom.
Yeah.
So that we get a full perspective on, small location conditions.
And the excellent thing about this sensor, of course, you can tell what is going on in the present. So that's great, but the power really comes when you start to predicting what is going to happen.
Yeah.
Once you do this 3 or 4 times, the software itself start to predicting what will be the next condition that is going to happen. And when it doesn't happen, it tells you like, all of the other times that we did this cycle, this happened, and it's not happening now.
Yeah.
And it tells you like, if it's water, if it's temperature, if it's the humidity, and that really helps the grower there. Like, as you can see, it's so complex to run this, and then you have to do other stuff like taking care of your books or trying to do marketing or something like that. And that's when the plants start to feel like when the grower is not there.
Yeah.
But right now, the present technology that we are using here will help us even more.
Yeah. So one of the greatest things about all of this has been the relationship that's really grown itself between LDCA, right, and the food bank. But also, I really appreciated Mike as a friend. It's great. But you two guys have kind of become growing buddies, right? You're experimenting with all these things together. You email back and forth. You're heading, right after this show goes on, you guys are heading away for a day to go look at some experimentation stuff, right? So it's all fantastic. It's great to think of all the future and what this is going to mean for London. But it also shows that relationships are key to it all, and collaboration and everything. And I think both of you, it's fun watching the both of you together.
Well, a large part of this is actually, I would say, Luis is a very wonderful person, and so we have lots of laughs. But really, a lot of this is to avoid, to the best of our abilities,
Mistakes.
failure, multiple failures, and then to optimize as quickly as we can to maximize the yield out of these C-camps.
Yeah.
Eventually Luis would get it all, but with software, Luis then focuses in on the non-normal. If there's issues that have to be resolved, he can focus on those, and then the real, I would say, labor-intensive part of this, which is the planting and the harvesting.
Yeah.
I suspect by the time people start to realize how much food comes out of one of these C-cans, it becomes a real issue on, I would say, harvesting.
Yeah.
Harvesting is going to be a very sort of manual part of this operation. And while on the leafy green, you get 8 weeks in between harvest. On the superfoods, it's every 10 days. And so it's very... And that's not something software can do for you.
Yeah, that's right. But what the LDCA has done is that you've given a gift to the community, right? But it's not just a 125th anniversary gift. It involves construction, it involves your skills, but it's really saying to the community, it's time to move on and to think about the future and food security. The fact that the LDCA says that with all of its expertise and with its reach and with its clout, I think will really help us to maybe get to the next level as a community. So Mike, be sure you communicate to all of your members just how fantastic it is and what they're doing, not so much for the food bank per se, and not just so much for hungry families, but maybe it'll help this community get a grip on what a food city could look like and the technologies that would be required. So thank you both for all of this. It's awesome.